Hi, my name is Dan Kalish. If you don't know about me, I am a chiropractor by training, but I function as a naturopath. I was raised by, I went to chiropractic college, that's where I got a degree, but every one of my teachers that I was interested in was a naturopath. And so when I graduated from chiropractic college, I studied with a bunch of naturopaths. And California at that time didn't have licensing for naturopaths. So anyway, just a lot of the things that I've learned are fundamentals of naturopathic medicine. A lot of the chiropractors have been into this for generations. And now we're in a world where there's a huge emphasis on trying to figure out immune function. And it's been a part of integrative alternative medicine from the beginning. And there's, people like me that have been around for a while have a certain amount of knowledge. I've been treating patients for 28 years. I've seen, you know, maybe 10,000 patients in my practice, more than that through the training programs that I lead. And then I've been studying this stuff for a long time too. I'm just kind of interested in it. And so what we're going to see now, what we are seeing now, and we'll continue to see, is just this wave of immune boosting products and programs and whatnot. And so I wanted to just talk a little bit about the science, a little bit about how your immune system works, and what we've seen over the years in integrative medicine work for real. So number one concept is you don't want to get a virus in the first place. Number two concept is if you do get a virus, any virus, you want your immune system to already be in really good shape so you can fight it off. And number three concept is if you get the virus and you start to get really sick, you're in pretty deep trouble and you are going to end up in an ER, and we just don't want that to happen, right? So what we're looking at is how do you, number one, prevent yourself from getting viruses in the first place and strengthen your mucosal immunity so it's harder for these organisms to penetrate and get into your body. And I talked about that in the first talk in this series. Number two, if you do get a virus exposed to you and it gets into your system, how can you make sure that you're one of those people that just fights it off and a few weeks later you're okay? For any viral infection, whether it's a common flu bug or the new bug that we're all worried about, or any viral infection, right? And for that matter, the same thing for any parasite that you might pick up when you're traveling overseas, or any bacterial infection. It's the same general rule book, in terms of how your immune system works. And the people that we're seeing getting into really deep trouble with this virus are obviously either older, or many of them who are younger have what they call comorbidities. That means that they've got something going on already that's making their immune system not work that great, or they've got something going on already, like they're pre-diabetic or diabetic, they have cardiovascular disease problems, they're overweight, and they've got something that makes them prone to not responding really well to inflammation. Okay, and this is all over the news as well right now, this idea of cytokine storms. So a cytokine, basically they're saying that the inflammatory response to any infection is good, but in this infection, the inflammatory response can go bad, right? And so you want, again, to have a normal, healthy inflammatory response when you first get sick so that you can fight these things off and not go into this cascade of chronic inflammation, and then the inflammation growing, and then it going into something that becomes potentially life-threatening, right? And so when people have low-grade chronic inflammation just because they're not healthy, it's more likely that they're going to have problems when they get sick. And that's kind of what we're seeing right now. So we're talking about prevention at its best. And I think the biggest picture concept with immune function in general is that you don't have to take an immune booster. You don't want to think about this as boosting your immune system or improving your immune system. We just have to, and this is a fundamental concept of functional medicine, you just have to normalize it, right? And all these years of doing this work, when you look at, I'll show you a lab here, when you take somebody who's not that healthy and you look at their labs and you normalize their function, you just get them back to normal. It's like being superhuman. What that says to me is that the normal, healthy state of the body is pretty amazing, okay? And so we're not talking about immune boosting, we're just talking about normalizing immune function, because the normal, healthy immune function was built and designed over eons to fight infections, and is very good at it, all right? And where you see problems are when people don't have that peak health, they don't have that peak functioning of their immune system, and then they get sick, and then they're going to have trouble. So I'm just to show you today just 3 aspects of immunity that are absolutely key. We'll look at a few research studies, and then I'm going to show you how the labs work too. So let's just cruise through this lab. We're not going to look at all these things on here, but I thought we could focus on these few. And the first one I want to talk about was zinc. So this is an ion panel from a lab company called Genova. I run this on a lot of patients right now, costs like around 600 bucks, and it gives you more information than you could possibly imagine about all these things that everyone is worried about now. So if you're a patient and you're listening and you're curious about doing this, sign up. We have free 15-minute consults with my health coach, and she can tell you all about what it's like to be a patient. And go to kalishwellness.com and you can sign up, okay, if you want to be a patient. So now, plasma zinc, you can see, is measured on this test. And if zinc levels are normal, that's a sign that your immune system in regards to zinc is in pretty good shape. If your zinc levels are low, that is a major catastrophic problem for your immune system. So you can measure your zinc levels, see if they're normal or low. And zinc is also very strongly related to another mineral called copper. So copper and zinc interact with one another. They almost sort of trade places with one another. And if you take too much zinc for too long, you will lower your copper levels, right? So if you take too much zinc for too long, you run the risk of lowering your copper, which is not a good thing. That doesn't make you healthier, that makes you worse. So the right amount of zinc is good. Too much zinc for too long, not so good. So if your levels of zinc are low and you start to supplement with it, it typically takes about 6 months to start to get the levels up by 1 quintile. That's one little chunk, one little hash mark to the right. Okay, so again, 6 months of zinc supplementation for people that are low will bring those levels up. So a typical person who's low in zinc, you can see the math here, right? They would do 6 months to get to here, another 6 months to get to here. So about a year of zinc supplementation for someone who tests low will get them into the normal ranges. Okay, so it takes a little while. If you take zinc for too long, let's say you keep taking it and your zinc ends up being high, then you're going to start to lower copper, and that is not good for you, okay? These two minerals interact with one another. You don't want to lower your copper. Copper is really important. It helps your blood cells, red blood cells, carry oxygen around, and that's a pretty important thing. So copper is really important. Most people don't take copper as a supplement because no one thinks about it really. And that's a good thing probably because you can become copper toxic. So you only want to take copper if you know you need copper. Okay, and if you do a test like this, you'll be able to see, and sometimes people are low in zinc and their copper is normal. Sometimes people are low in copper and their zinc is normal. And sometimes, people are low in zinc and copper. You can't really tell. You have to do the test. You can't just look at somebody and tell if they're low in zinc or not, okay? So if you are low in zinc, again, 6 months to a year to bring the zinc levels up, but you don't want to be on it for too long. Okay, so let's go look at, that's the lab part of this. So let's go look at how this all relates to immunity here. And I've got a bunch of different immune slides that I just want to show just for talking points. So innate immunity, right? And adaptive immunity. And you can see on this slide, they're looking at all the different ways that zinc deficiency interferes with your immune system. Have a cool slide. So here's a normal immune system on the left, and then a zinc deficient immune system on the right. And they're trying to show you, and we're not going to memorize all this, it's not a physiology class, obviously, but just so you can kind of get familiar with some of these terms. And it's not too hard to see this. They've got the diagrams laid out pretty well here. So to start this whole thing off, right? You've got the infectious agent, that's the bad thing, right? And then you can see what they've done is highlight in red all the parts of the immune system that zinc is directly involved in. And let's just not get into what each one of these interleukin things is, or T cells or B cells or whatever. You don't have to get into the detail of it, but you can see zinc is important all around here, right? And it's important for you to be able to make this attack. And it's not just that zinc is important in one part of this process. Zinc is important in many, many parts of the immune response. And so we just have to kind of, be aware of that, right? Super important, super, super important. And I'll show you a little bit more detail here about what these terms mean. And I'm sure you'll be hearing these more and more as time goes on. So we have this idea of innate immunity and adaptive immunity. So innate immunity is your rapid response team. kind of like your Navy SEALs, like your SWAT team. It's like the people that are first on to the first responders, we call them now, right? That's your innate immunity. And there are these different names here again, natural killer cells, macrophages, neutrophils, eosinophils, basophils. You get these, some of these you'll see on the standard blood work you do with a regular doctor. And then there's adaptive immunity. It's adapting, it's a little slower, right? And these have other fancy names, B cells, T cells, CD4 cells, CD8, all these different fancy names, okay? And there's some overlap between them. And why this is so important is because your adaptive immunity, well, your innate immunity makes that first attempt to kill things. So you want that innate immunity in really good shape, right? If you want your first responders to be good at what they do, right? And then adaptive immunity is where your body is starting to make antibodies against whatever the infection is. That's your body ramping up production to try to fight this thing. Okay, so you want both sides of your immune system to be in good shape. And you'll see this is a nice slide here that just shows you time after infection. So let me make this smaller here. So in an innate immunity, again, that's the early responder, right? Within hours after an infection, your body's mobilizing innate immunity. And then within days after an infection, your body's mobilizing the adaptive immunity, and you're starting to make antibodies against whatever the organism is. Okay, so you want to be able to do all these things. But what's really important is your first line of defense against the microbes, these epithelial barriers I talked about in my first talk, that secretory IgA has a lot to do with that mucosal barrier and protecting us from the microbe in the first place, right? And then the strength of the innate immunity is going to determine whether you win in the first round or lose in the first round. You could have a mild illness if your innate immunity is quite strong, and that you allow your body for your adaptive immunity to then kick in. And if both these systems are in good shape, then you'll be someone who gets mildly sick, right? And the things that undermine these different aspects of our health are a problem. So again, let me just kind of summarize here as a little thing to read to you uh, about the different kinds of immunity. Immune system divided into two categories, innate and adaptive. Innate immunity refers to non-specific defense mechanisms that come into play immediately or within an hour of an antigen. An antigen is bad guys, the bug. Antigen's appearance in the body. These mechanisms include physical barriers, that's the mucosal tissue, mucosal barrier, right? And immune cells that attack foreign cells in the body. The innate immune response is activated by the chemical properties of the bug, okay? Adaptive immunity, a little different, refers to antigen-specific immune response. The adaptive immune response is more complex than innate. The antigen must be first processed and recognized. Once the antigen is recognized, the adaptive immune system makes an army of immune cells designed to attack that antigen. Adaptive immunity is also includes a memory that makes future responses against a specific bug more efficient. So when you hear about antibodies or antibody testing, your immune system makes antibodies to kill these bugs, and those antibodies can stay in your body for a long period of time. Okay, there's also what we call PCR testing, which is being done for the COVID virus. That's looking to see if the virus is actively in your body at that time, causing an infection. The antibody test is looking at your adaptive immunity to see if you have antibodies against that bug. That would imply that either you have it right now or that you had it before and you got rid of it. Okay, so again, the PCR testing tells you you have the bug right now and you could potentially infect someone else. The antibody test tells you that either you have it now or you had it before. And the antibody testing is now becoming widely available in the United States. And we have access to those tests. I'm going to start having access to those tests on Monday. Let's see. A little behind schedule here with the testing, but we're catching up. Okay, so we talked about innate immunity, the bigger picture. And again, just want to emphasize that what's the most important thing is just to establish a normal immune function. You don't need extra zinc. You just need the right amount of zinc. You don't need extra vitamin D. You just need a healthy amount of vitamin D. But most people that we run these labs on are low in zinc and low in vitamin D, right? Many of us are, most everybody that I test is nutrient deficient. And so we're prone to picking up problems because we're not really figuring all that stuff out. So let me talk a little bit more about zinc and then we'll move on to vitamin D. I've got some zinc articles I pulled here. Yeah, so here's a research study from a few years ago, zinc and its role in immunity and inflammation. And just so you know, you can look these things up too. You know, the PubMed is open to the public. Most of these articles, you can at least read the summaries for free. Sometimes they'll charge you, to read the entire article. But if you look in the scientific literature, it's quite interesting. You can start to read about these things. It's not like these are new ideas. So I'm going to read a little bit about zinc. And now that we've talked about the different kinds of immunity, this should make a little bit of sense, okay? I'm going to skip around because this article is not obviously about just the general ideas about zinc is why I couldn't make it here. So again, this is an article, Zinc and its Role in Immunity and Inflammation from the journal Autoimmunity Reviews, 2015. So zinc's nutritional importance has been known for a long time, but in the last decades, its importance in immune modulation has arisen. This review aims at describing the mechanisms involved in the regulation of zinc homeostasis and their effects on the immune system. And this is related to arthritis, but there's some things in here that are important. Zinc deficiency affects cells involved in both innate and adaptive immunity at the survival, proliferation, and maturation levels. These cells include monocytes, natural killers, T and B cells, right? Those are all the cells that we just looked at. So zinc is involved in all aspects of these immune functions, and you can measure your zinc levels and tell if you're low in zinc, okay? So this zinc is important. And there's literally thousands and thousands and thousands of studies on zinc and immune function. I'm showing you, I think, like 2 or 3, just to get you kind of open to the concept. Like literally thousands. There's more than any human being could ever read. You could spend your whole life trying to read about zinc and you would die before you were through, okay? There's just too many articles. So this is from American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, Zinc and Immune Function, the biological basis of altered resistance to infection. Okay, what a great title. Zinc is known to play a central role in the immune system. Zinc deficient persons experience increased susceptibility to a variety of pathogens. That's not what we want, right? Zinc deficient persons experience increased susceptibility to a variety of pathogens. And I don't think this will ever happen, but if we just could magically test the zinc levels of every American and put everyone who is low on zinc on a high dose of zinc, that would probably change the outcome of immune function in America, right? I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that would be pretty cool if it did. Zinc affects multiple aspects of the immune system, from the barrier of the skin to gene regulation within lymphocytes. Those are some of the immune cells. Zinc is crucial for normal development and function of cells, mediating non-specific immunity, including neutrophils and natural killer cells. Zinc deficiency also affects the development of acquired immunity, okay, by preventing both the outgrowth and certain functions of T lymphocytes. And they've got some fancy names here. We won't get into that. Okay. And then zinc also functions as an antioxidant, can stabilize membranes. This review explores these aspects of zinc biology of the immune system and attempts to provide a biological basis for the altered host resistance to infections observed during zinc deficiency. So in other words, when you're looking at an infection, you can think about trying to kill the virus, kill the bacteria, kill the parasite, or you can think about strengthening the host, what they call strengthening host resistance. Zinc is something that would strengthen host resistance, right? And then when we look at, I think that was, yeah, there's another image here. How zinc deficiency affects the immune system. Okay, so again, we're looking at the same basic framework here, where we've got zinc deficiency interfering with thymic or T cells, right? Also, as we saw in the second one with B cells and other aspects of your immune system, and making it so that your immune system is weak. And if you're deficient in zinc, it's pretty hard to get it from eating zinc-rich foods. But let me show you one more time here. Now, maybe this will make a little bit more sense now we come back to the one that we started at. When you start to get familiar with some of these terms, we're all going to learn all these names in the next couple of years anyways, so you might as well learn them now. So T cells, B cells, lymphocytes, right? What we're talking about with zinc is that it's involved in many, many of the different roles. It doesn't have just one role. It plays many roles in the functioning of our immune system. And if your zinc levels are low, you're going to be in trouble. You take too much zinc, remember, you can have a copper problem. Okay, so it's not, you don't want to just take it forever. And by the way, zinc is sold out like worldwide. Every zinc supplement just got bought by somebody in the last month or two. So you can't even buy zinc right now anyways. But which is probably not a bad thing, because I'm a whole test before you guess, before you take stuff kind of person, right? So I want you to know about these things, but be careful. And if you do have zinc and you're taking zinc, just don't take it for more than, I don't know, maybe 6 months. Because you eventually, if you take it for too long, you're going to end up lowering your copper. So if you have zinc and you're worried about your immune system, let's say maybe 6 months. Remember, in 6 months it can go. Let me show you here. In 6 months you can go 1 quintile to the right. So here, let me show you why I said that. So if your zinc levels are normal right now, and you take zinc for 6 months because you're worried about getting sick, you'll boost your zinc up to here, but it's not going to go super high, right? If you took zinc for a year, you would go here and then you would go extra high, and that would be bad. And if you take zinc for too long, you lower copper, and then your red blood cells can't carry oxygen, and that's really bad for your lungs, right? So you don't want to do that. So if you're here on zinc, you need it for 6 months or a year just to get up to normal. If you're here with your zinc, you need it for 6 months to get to normal, right? So if you're already at good levels of zinc and you took it for a year, you'd get too high. So logic there stands. If you got some zinc and you don't want to do a test yet, then maybe take it for 6 months, but not much longer, okay? Because you don't want to go high and you don't want to lower your copper. All right. I don't think zinc is particularly toxic if it goes high. It's more that it lowers your copper that's the problem. But it's a very, very important immune nutrient, so we don't want to ignore that. Uh, Let me see. Let me take an emotional break here. Have a sip of water. Let's talk about fatty acids next. Sorry, I'm not going in any kind of order because I've been putting these presentations together like the hour before. Where are the fatty acids here? I think they're down at the bottom. Oh, yeah. So let me show you another really important nutrient, and I'll show you the test first. Again, the test costs around $600. We do these with patients all over the world. If you want to be a patient, go to the Kalish Institute, Kalish Wellness website and sign up. Everything I do is over the phone, so you don't have to worry. So again, on a Genova ion panel, they measure fatty acids. And the classifications of fatty acids that are measured are, some of these you may have heard of, omega-3 and omega-6. So the omega-3s include ALA or alpha-linolenic. This one is EPA, or usually you see it on the label, it'll be say EPA. It's a type of fish oil or omega-3. DHA, also usually sold as a supplement. It'll say on the label, omega-3 fish oil or something like that. So the omega-3s are really important. You can see this person is quite low in the omega-3s. And then we also have the omega-6s. And the most famous omega-6 is called GLA, gamma-linolenic, okay, GLA. And that's usually sold as primrose oil, borage oil, or borage oil. Sometimes people pronounce it an omega-6, okay? And out of all these, we want to really start to focus, a lot of our attention on arachidonic or arachidonic acid. So arachidonic is an omega-6, and arachidonic is responsible for many very important immune functions, and arachidonic is responsible for many important anti-inflammatory or inflammatory functions. If arachidonic is high, we're going to be inflamed and not very good, right? And you don't want to be walking around being inflamed right now, because if you're already in an inflammatory state and you get this viral infection, that is going to put you at risk, okay? So you want your inflammation to be low, normal, okay? And arachidonic, when it's high, indicates that the person is losing the battle against inflammation, that they're walking around inflamed. And you want to be uninflamed when you walk around, okay? And omega-3s are also famous when they're low for leading to problems with inflammation. So when you take omega-3s, they have an anti-inflammatory or protective effect, And if arachidonic is too high, you want to bring it down. And I'll show you some examples of why. So again, you can test for all these things so you can know. Test, don't guess. Now, if your omega-3 is low, and you're a vegan, you don't want to eat animal products, that's fine. You can do it with, as the picture shows, nuts and seeds. Cashews, walnuts, hemp seeds, chia seeds, pumpkin seeds, all these good foods have the omega-3s. So you don't have to use animal products. What most people do with omega-3s is they can think about fish, and they have fish a few times a week. Fish has mercury. Fish is not always the greatest. You have to get clean fish if you can. But if you want to get, again, omega-3s, you can get them from plants. You can get them from animal products, especially fish. But nuts and seeds also have them. Okay, so that's where the omega-3s come from in our diet. The famous ones again: chia seeds, hemp seeds, and the famous of all, the best of all, the most just anti-inflammatory omega-3 you could possibly imagine is called flax seed. In a normal world, flaxseed production should be completely sold out right now because this guy right here, flax seeds, the ones that I buy are a little more brown, but I think those are just a lighter color flax. Flax seeds are really, 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 really important as an anti-inflammatory. Okay. Now here's another example of omega-6s, your flax seeds, your walnuts, your avocado. All these are omega-6s. Okay. So why is this so important? Let's talk about how do these relate to your immune system. Well, remember that a lot of why people are dying right now is because of what they call comorbidities: high blood pressure, diabetes, cardiovascular disease problems, right? And in general, these people or obesity, in general, these people are inflamed. They're overly inflamed. And so when they get the virus or a virus, they're not very well suited to deal with it. And they're at higher risk for having really catastrophic problems. So one of the ways you can protect yourself is to uninflame yourself. And omega-3s are probably, top category of ways that you can get inflammation out of your body. And you can do this with food, right? So flaxseed, fish, try to get fish that doesn't have a lot of mercury. And you're thinking about the omega-3 side of this, right? And that's super important. Okay. And there also are supplements you can get that do the same exact thing. In fact, I just bought a half a dozen bottles of omega-3s and brought them to my mom because I don't want her to die from COVID. And then she's on a really great nutritional program taking all this stuff right now. Um, we should do that. I should promote that after the webinar, like Dan's mom's supplement program. Anyways, I bought her a box of stuff. It was kind of funny because she lives in this senior apartment housing thing. She has a studio apartment, and it was really funny because she comes out. She's like, Danny, I'll meet you on the corner, because they're in lockdown, right? Well, I'm gonna tell you the whole story. So a few weeks ago, this thing hit, and I called the senior center where my mother lives, and I told them, look, you're going to see the biggest lawsuit in the entire planet, and I'll probably like bomb the place if you don't lock this place down. My mom's saying people are coming in and out and whatever. I just totally threatened these people. That day, they shut down the senior apartment unit. They forbid any visitors from coming in. They stopped the cafeteria area where they have meal service. They're feeding everybody in the rooms. Anyways, they're very responsive to an outright threat, which is great. So mom's totally safe there, but she's kind of locked up in her studio apartment. And so she's like, and I needed to get her supplements. She's like, don't leave them with the front desk because if they do, then they're gonna like clean them and. So I was like, okay. So she's like, I'll meet you outside. So she like stealthily sneaks out of her senior center place, and I mean, it's just an apartment building, right? It's not like a hospital or anything. But she gets out of her apartment, and we meet on the corner, and I pull up, and then I get out this like paper bag, and it has all her supplements in it, and she's like looking around like it's some spy movie or something, and she's putting them in her backpack. And she's like, okay, Danny, I'll see you later. And she's like, shuffles back over to her apartment. But anyways, yeah, so mom's on omega-3s. This is really important, right? You don't want to mess around with this kind of stuff. Um, omega-6. Now here's where things get a little interesting. Remember now, most the sort of dogma about the fatty acids is that the American diet has too many omega-6s and not enough omega-3s, which is why we're all so inflamed, which is why they're, part of the side effect or relation to things like diabetes, obesity, etc. And so the idea being you take omega-3s to balance that out because the American diet is full of omega-6s. Okay. Now, omega-6s, linoleic and arachidonic, when they're high, when arachidonic is high, remember we talked about that earlier, that is catastrophic because arachidonic produces these pro-inflammatory compounds: eicosanoids, prostaglandins, leukotrienes, thromboxanes. High levels of these means you're highly inflamed, and they come from high arachidonic acid. So high arachidonic acid means high inflammatory markers, right? High eicosanoids, high prostaglandins, high leukotrienes, high thromboxanes. That is bad. That means you're really, really inflamed. So the general off-the-shelf solution to that is to take omega-3s and to reduce your omega-6s from your diet. That's like don't have a lot of corn oil and vegetable oil and stuff like that. Okay, get off your processed foods generally, and don't eat too much meat. Some meat is fine, but don't eat a steak 3 times a day, and don't have tons of corn oil, right? And get into your vegetables and your fruits and your nuts and seeds and all the healthier foods that don't have these inflammatory responses. Okay, so that is sort of natural health 101. Omega-3 is good, omega-6 bad. Omega-6s lead to arachidonic, and high arachidonic is a problem. All right, so however, well, let's look at cases. So here's a case of a test that I did recently on a patient, and his omega-3s were low. So again, 6 months of omega-3 supplementation will bring him up. And what's that going to do? Reduce inflammation. Is that immune boosting? Absolutely not. That's like normalizing your omega-3s. Does it boost your immune system? Well, yeah, of course. It normalizes it though, right? It's not like it's just making your immune system work properly. Okay, and a lot of us have these omega-3 deficiencies, which means our immune system is inherently weak, and we're going to be inflamed as a result of that. Okay, now, but you can also see, and this, I'll just make up some numbers here because I don't want to take too much time to find all the different labs, but you can have high arachidonic, and remember we said that was bad because that means you're very inflamed. You can also, in some cases, have low arachidonic because you don't have enough omega-6s. So it's not like always one thing. And then, isn't it just like life there? As you get older, you realize that it's just a gray area. All of life is just like one big gray area. I still remember when I was like 9 or 10 years old, something happened that was profoundly unjust. I don't remember. I think my bike got stolen, or I don't know, my dad said I couldn't buy something, or I don't know. And I was just like, oh, it's not fair, it's not fair. And I just remember my dad saying, life isn't fair. And just looking at me like, you got a long way to go, kid. You gotta figure this out. Oh my gosh. But yeah, life is gray areas and life is not fair. So here's another example of the 3s and 6s. So the 3s are the fish oils and flax oil. The 6s are the vegetable oils. And this is a kind of a complicated chart, but you should know a little bit about how this works. Your body converts the 3s one to the other, to the other, to the other. It makes one from the other to the other to the other. It takes the 6s and can make them down these pathways, right? In order for these pathways of production to work in your body, you have these enzymes called desaturase enzymes. So what happens is the enzyme takes this one fat and works its little magic on it and makes the next fat. And then this enzyme does a little magic and makes the next fat. And your body, it's pretty amazing you can even do this, right? And so when you take a lot of omega-3s, you're going to be using a lot of these enzymes to make these other fats. And the body preferentially converts omega-3s. So if you take a ton of omega-3s for too long, guess what happens to these enzymes on the omega-6 side? They get reduced. They don't have as much of an impact because all the enzymatic action is going over to the omega-3s. Now, if you're high in arachidonic and you're inflamed, this is a good thing, right? Because you're reducing here's your arachidonic, you're reducing your arachidonic. Okay, so fish oils will hog all these enzymes and they'll make you less inflamed because they're anti-inflammatory, and also because they'll help break up the overproduction of arachidonic because the enzymes are going to be hogged on this system side and you won't have as much enzymes over here. However, if you take fish oils for too long or too much, then you get all these enzymes working on this side and you won't have enough of the good omega-6s, okay? So it's not a black and white issue. It's not like 3s are bad and 6s, it's not like 3s are good and 6s are bad. It's the balance of them that matters. And when you do the lab testing, you can dial in the balance. Now, this particular person had decent omega-6s and really low 3s. So this person could take omega-3s for a year and be healthier and healthier each year that they did that. Each month that they did that, okay? So quick review. 3s and 6s. 3s in general are considered anti-inflammatory, but you can take too much of them. Would take probably 6 months or a year to get too much of them in. 6s can be dangerous, especially arachidonic acid, because it's pro-inflammatory. And this is what everyone needs to avoid now. We all want to be not inflamed, right? So we want to balance this out. However, as I try to show with the lab, there's a balance between these, and there are some people that are low in sixes. Let me just show you one example of that so you can see I'm not making this stuff up, just in case you're wondering. Here. Here's another example of a test. This one is a woman. Here we go. Omega-3, low. You guys getting, you're figuring this out now, right? Needs a little fish or fish oils. Need some flax. You do it with flax. You want to be all veganish, just do the flax. But uh-oh, wait a minute. Low omega-6. Look, low, low, low. Arachidonic, low. Remember we said high arachidonic is inflamed, dangerous. Low arachidonic, not good either. So this person needs to get a little bit of omega-6 cautiously to bring up the levels. Okay. Now, obviously, you don't want to take omega-6 fats unless you know you need them. But if you need them, you want them. Okay, so let me show you some other reasons why these are important. Here's more information on the fatty acids. They help with balancing your lipids or fats. Obviously, they help with your blood vessels. A lot of people take them to help prevent cardiovascular disease. They help with platelets, cardiovascular health, mitochondrial function, all kinds of stuff, right? Another diagram here just to show you about the arachidonic and how that can be dangerous. And not to get into the detail here, but let's just say arachidonic's in the middle, right? And you can see everything that comes from there. Prostaglandins, how it regulates kidneys, brain, your vascular system, your muscle cells, your mast cells, right? All these different things are regulated by arachidonic. So you want that arachidonic to be normal. You want these prostaglandins to be normal. That's how we regulate a lot of stuff that has to do with inflammation. And again, here's another thing just to show you arachidonic, it's on the top, right? That means it's super important. It's doing all these other things. Anti-inflammation, this is what we want. Protection of mucosa, okay? This is what we want, right? We want to protect ourselves and keep from being inflamed. So that's super important. So then we go back up and think, okay, well, you could take omega-3 supplements. Don't take them for too long. Kind of like the zinc problem. Let me show you here from the lab. I'm sorry, I just think in terms of labs. I don't know. It's just so used to looking at these reports. But let's say that that's a bad example. Let's use this one. So let's say that you take omega-3s. Let's say your omega-3s are low and you take them for 6 months. That's fine. A year, pretty good. But don't take them forever, right? If you take them for too long, at too high a dose, you're going to lower your omega-6s. Remember I showed you the enzyme thing? The enzyme kind of pulls over to one side and the 6s will end up becoming low. In the beginning, when you're inflamed, that's a good thing. But if you do that for too long, it can mess you up, right? So in the beginning, if you're lower, let's say your arachidonic is high and you're really inflamed, omega-3s will go up, arachidonic will go down, and that's good, okay? But after 6 months or a year, you could get yourself into trouble. So if you take the 3s, let's say for 3 years in a high dose, and all your 3s are super high, you might start to lower your 6s too much. And that's not healthy either. Okay, so there's a balance there. How long could you take the 3s? It's probably like the zinc. It's probably, I would guess, like 6 months, or let's say that you're here, and you take them for 6 months, you take them for a year, maybe towards the end of a year, you're going to start to get levels maybe a little too high, So yeah, 6 months to a year, you could probably take fish oils without having to worry about it. I'm an advocate of doing the testing so you know exactly what's going on. All right, emotional break here for water. Just when you think you had problems, like I thought my biggest problem a couple months ago was that I had to take my car in for the like 30,000 mile checkup and I was 5,000 miles late and I was all stressed about that, and now I'm worried about like entire continents of people dying. Like, how did that happen? I don't know. It's so crazy. All right. Okay, one more thing. If you guys are up for it, I know this is a lot. One more subject area here before we wrap up, and that is everybody's favorite, vitamin D. So let's just start off with a nice little scientific article here. Vitamin D and protective immunity. I thought this was really interesting. Let me show you this. I love historical medical stuff. So this is an article, Vitamin D and the Immune System for the Journal of Investigative Medicine. And it's talking about vitamin D and the immune system. That's what the article is called, right? So it is now clear vitamin D has important roles in addition to its classic effects on calcium and bone balance, right? As the vitamin D receptor is expressed on immune cells, remember we just saw these B cells, T cells, right? As the vitamin D receptor is expressed on immune cells, and these immunologic cells are capable of synthesizing the active vitamin D metabolite. Vitamin D has the capacity or capability of acting in a local immune fashion. I'm kind of summarizing that. Vitamin D can modulate, remember we talked about different types of immune function? Vitamin D can modulate the innate and adaptive immune responses. Let me say that again. Just like zinc, vitamin D and zinc can modulate, that means improve, normalize, regulate the innate and adaptive immune responses. So vitamin D and zinc can modulate, that means control or regulate the innate, that's that immune response that happens right away. So you get exposed to a virus, your innate immune response jumps in within minutes or hours. Vitamin D modulates that. It controls it. It regulates it. So does zinc. Do you want a really strong innate immune system? Absolutely, because then when you get exposed to the virus, your body fights it off, and you'll be one of those people that, yeah, I got it, but it wasn't that bad. Okay. If your innate immune system is engaged, then you need the adaptive immune response to be engaged as well. That's where you start to make these antibodies to kill the virus. Do you want that really strong? Yes, you do. Vitamin D and zinc also have roles in the adaptive immune response. Okay, so what you're saying here is vitamin D and zinc, we saw earlier, modulate or control or regulate or improve or strengthen the innate and adaptive immune responses, both. Now, can you measure vitamin D? Absolutely. Do you need more D than can you become toxic in D? Yeah, absolutely. You can get too much of it for sure. Let's look at this person's vitamin D levels. But that is not good. Vitamin D is 30 on this individual. You want your vitamin D between a 50 and a 70. Okay. High vitamin D above 100 is not good for you. You want it between 50 and 70. You have to test. And let's look at the other one here. I just got two labs up, but that's just for fun. Look at this other person. Oh, is they good? How's their vitamin D? Not that great either, 28. All right. Does this person have good innate immunity? No. Does this person have good adaptive immunity? No. Let's just look at a few others just for fun, just because we can. Uh, I don't know. I've always thought this stuff was interesting. Ever since I was a kid, I thought physiology was pretty cool. But now it seems a little more important than before. Oh, this person has good vitamin D. Look, 73. That's like healthy. What does that mean? This, in terms of vitamin D regulating innate immunity and adaptive immunity, this person's in good shape. They don't need to take vitamin D. They don't need to take it. Let's look at one more if we can here, just for fun. You guys can see how this stuff really works. It's not that complicated, is it? Uh, Vitamin D, not bad, 43, but not great. So a little bit of a tune-up, right? If we saw somebody that had a 20, someone had a 30, someone had a 40, someone had a 70, you know, you really want to have good vitamin D. So now here's the really cool thing about this article. As I'm reading this article the other day, uh, let's see, the immune system defends the body from foreign invading organisms, blah, blah, blah. Implications of vitamin D deficiency on the immune system have become clear in recent years. But here's where it gets really interesting. Vitamin D has been used unknowingly to treat infections such as tuberculosis before the advent of effective antibiotics. Okay, so let's just take a deep breath here and remember back to the day when you could get tuberculosis and they didn't have any antibiotics. Does that sound familiar? You could get a virus and there's no known treatment right now. There's no antiviral. So there was a time, not that long ago, where doctors were faced with this issue, tuberculosis, and no effective antibiotics. very similar to the time we're in now. And what did they do? Read on. Tuberculosis patients were sent to sanatoriums where treatment included exposure to sunlight, which was thought to directly kill the tuberculosis. Cod liver oil, a rich source of vitamin D, has also been employed as a treatment for TB as well. So in other words, back before we had these antibiotics, doctors knew there's something about sunlight that made TB patients get better. And part of it was that the sunlight brought up their vitamin D, right? And everybody's heard that before. Vitamin D is a sunshine vitamin. Although you'll find that a lot of people that have, I test people that live in Florida, live in Hawaii, live in very sunlight-rich environments that are still low in vitamin D. Okay, so you still have to test, even if you live somewhere where it's sunny and you're outside all the time in a short sleeve shirt and shorts, you still have to test your vitamin D. But the point is that there's been times in the past when people were fighting infections that they couldn't treat. Doctors were treating infections. They had no medications for it. They stuck these people outside, right? And they got better. Part of that because of the vitamin D. Fascinating, I thought. Another paper here from the a journal, it's an older one, 2006, Epidemiology, Infectious Disease Journal, Epidemic Influenza and Vitamin D. Oh yeah, I thought this one was interesting too. In 1981, R. Edgar Hope Simpson proposed that a seasonal stimulus intimately associated with solar radiation explained the remarkable seasonality of epidemic influenza. So I think what they're trying to say there, if you want to put that in English, is that people get the flu really bad in the winter, seasonal, right? And what the heck's going on? And Edgar is thinking, hey, people, it's solar radiation, right? Well, that's a little weird. Um, Solar radiation triggers robust seasonal vitamin D production in the skin, but maybe there's something to that, right? It's kind of a little crazy sounding, but you think about it, when it's winter, if you already have low vitamin D levels and you're not getting a lot of sunlight, your vitamin D is going to drop even more, and that innate immunity and adaptive immunity is going to be compromised because of that, right? So let's see, I think that's it on the vitamin D. And vitamin D may be, oh, here, I had a link to this thing I wanted to show you too. I forget what this was now, but let me try to pull it up. And then we're going to wrap up in one more minute, okay? And I'll see if there are any questions, I'll try to answer them. Oh, here it is. Oh yeah, this is just a link to the entire article, that's it. I thought this was pretty interesting. I read this morning, I think. Yeah, and again, these are all like published in medical journals, they're available online. As long as you start to have an understanding. Oh yeah, here, and this is like scientifically gobbledygookey stuff, but look, vitamin D has numerous effects on cells in the immune system. It inhibits B cell proliferation, blocks B cell differentiation. Vitamin D suppresses T cells, results in the ... right? Anyways, it's involved in tons of different aspects of immune function, just like zinc, remember? Not just one little place. It's involved in a lot of different ways. Effects of vitamin D on all these different cells that make up your immune system. And if you're low in vitamin D, you can't do this. Okay, so what does that mean really? It's like if you have, let's say you bought a 2001 S600 Mercedes. Not that I love those cars, but let's say you did buy one. They're the kind of cars that you see like foreign dictators driving around in, black, armored cars, but they're Mercedes, they're really fast. They have like a V12 engine, they go really fast. So let's say you have like the most beautiful 2001 Mercedes S600 ever made and spent 150 grand on it years and years ago, and you have no gasoline. Is it of use? Not really. It's just going to sit there, right? So your immune system without D, your immune system without zinc, your immune system without the omega-3s and 6s balanced out, it's like a car without gasoline. It just doesn't work. So when we're talking about boosting the immune system or supercharging the immune system or making your immune system strong, all we're talking about really having to do is creating normal physiology and normal balance, right? Testing and correcting your vitamin D. We didn't even talk about this other one yet. It's equally important. Testing and correcting your vitamin A. A is as important as D. Testing and correcting your zinc, right? Getting your omega-3s and 6s balanced out. That's all you really need to do to restore a very robust immune system. So it's not like we have to boost our immune systems. We want to get out of that mindset. You just want to normalize your function and normalize your physiology. And you can do that by taking these supplements if you want. Don't do it, most of these probably don't take for more than 6 months. Or you contact the office, schedule a consult, and do some testing and see exactly what you're low in. And so what I'm trying to do now for the rest of the year is design the ultimate immune programs, like I did for my mom, that are based on lab data, so we know exactly what you're taking and why. And at the end of 6 months or a year, we can test again and make sure that your levels are good, right? And that it's what they say, test, don't guess. We're going to test and test and test and make sure that everyone has a robust immune system, both innate immunity and adaptive immunity, maxed out and functioning like it should. All right, let me see if there are any questions. And yes, we will. Yep, this is recorded and we'll send out a copy of it. Let's see. Yeah, let me show you here. Let me show you the website real quick here in 1 second. If you want to get in touch with the office, go to kalishwellness.com and you can click start here. You can schedule a consult with our coach. And we have this thing going now. I can show you here. Let's see. What about vitamin C? Yeah, I want to do vitamin C. I want to do another talk on vitamin C and quercetin, and there's a bunch of others. What I wanted to start with, though, I thought, is the things that you can test for, as the initial round of what we're doing here, and then move on to other things that are just important for your immune system, that's harder to test for. Yeah, so we also have our health coach, Jennifer. You can call and schedule a free consult with her, see if you're an appropriate candidate for becoming a patient, okay? And everything I do is over the phone, telemedicine, so you don't have to go anywhere, travel. We just ship the lab kits directly to your house, believe it or not. Do the samples at home, ship them back to the lab, and then we get on the phone and talk about anything, all right? Okay, so we'll talk again at the next one of these. I hope you guys are safe out there. Talk next time.